All right, our first speaker tonight is a personal friend of mine. John Trautwein and his family and our family used to live in the same neighborhood, and he had a precious boy named Will, who was his oldest, and Will was the same age as my baby. Will and Susie and my husband and I played tennis together, and our boys played together until we moved away and lived in another neighborhood, another area. Then one day, I found out that Will was gone. John's here tonight to share his story of how they overcame that tragedy and how he's turned his pain into purpose by sharing that story and methods that can really, hopefully, give us all hope on how to address this with our teens that are struggling. So it's really my honor and my pleasure to be able to introduce John Trautwein from Will to Live.
Okay, well, thank you, Kathy, and it's very nice to be here. I appreciate you guys making the trek through the traffic on a Monday night just following Thanksgiving. So I'm going to take you on about 30-minute journey that I have been on, and my wife, who is out there manning the Will to Live table, has been on with me. And my goal tonight is to raise awareness. And that has been my goal for about 7 years now. 7 years ago, 7.5 years ago, when my son Will was still alive, I would have never attended a meeting like this because my son's fine. Mental illness does not affect the Trautwein family, it just doesn't. If someone would have told me that my son had depression, I would have been very upset. I would have been very offended, and I would have probably gotten in their face and told them to back off. I know my son. And I would have been totally wrong. But I was totally uneducated, I was totally unaware, and you are listening to tonight a dad. That's it. I'm not a mental health expert, I'm not a mental illness expert, I'm not a suicide expert, I'm just not. I am a dad. I live in this community. I've been here for 20 years. As Kathy said, we still live in the same neighborhood over in Fulton County. I work in Lawrenceville. I've worked in Gwinnett County for 15 years. And my wife Susie and our 4 kids, Will and Tommy and Michael and Holland, have been, how would I say, living the dream. Very happy home, very loving home. If my wife was in here, I probably wouldn't say this, but since she's out, she's nuts about me. And I'm nuts about her. And that's very important for you all to hear that. We really do. And ask Kathy. And we always have had a very happy home, a very loving home. I've always been a hands-on dad. I've always been a glass half full guy. Positive motivation, positive inspiration. I grew up in the Chicago area. I came from a very athletic family. My father was a professional baseball player with the Philadelphia Phillies. My brother played in the Mets organization. I went to Northwestern University on a baseball scholarship and spent 7 years in pro ball, and you'll see my baseball card up there on the left-hand side. I spent, of those 7 years, 6 of it was in the minors, but I did spend one very fun year with the Boston Red Sox in 1988. If you Google me, you'll be a little bit disappointed I wasn't that good. But I was on teams for a long, long time. And I was still on a very competitive team when I was 29 years old, which is rare. But now that I'm 56 years old, I'm still on teams. I'm on a whole bunch of teams. Susie, perhaps the real athlete of the family, my wife, was a 2-sport athlete at the University of Virginia. She played lacrosse and field hockey. So again, she was also a part of a team for a large part of her life. And so we were Team Trautwein, and our parenting style was, you gotta love your teammates on and off the field, and we hit our kids with every team cliche you could think of. But we had fun doing it, and we had a very happy home, and living the dream is truly a real statement. And the dream ended when Will took his life. It was October 15th in 2010. It was early in the morning on a Friday. We were so shocked by his death. He hung himself in his bedroom. Susie found him. We were so shocked that we actually considered that maybe somebody came in and killed him and made it look like a suicide. That's how clueless we are, that big and strong and happy and healthy, successful, popular young man would even be considering suicide. The word suicide was never mentioned in our house. He was a freshman at Northview High School. He got good grades. He was a very good athlete. He loved lacrosse. You see him playing there. He was a songwriter. He was in a band. He wrote music. He taught himself to play the guitar, and he was very, very good at it. Taught himself to play the piano and the drums. He had an army of friends. This kid was very popular. He was known as the consultant of his friends, which I later found out is very common. I had no idea. The night before he died, we went to Verrazano's pizza place in Johns Creek, and I tested Will at the table on his geology note cards for a test he was going to take the next morning. It was a Friday morning. He knew every answer to that test that he would never take. During dinner, he said to me, "Dad, on Saturday, I've got a ref over at Newtown Park. Can we get up early because that's the day I'm eligible to go get my driver's permit?" He was going to get his driver's permit the day after he killed himself. "Mom, am I getting my braces off this week or next?" He was going to get his braces off that he had on for 4 years. Notice, he's not showing his teeth. Next week. This young man had a lot of really exciting things that were going to happen to him literally tomorrow. Not months from now, not when he's finished with high school, not when he's out of college, not when he gets out of this town, tomorrow. And if you would have said to me that boy on that night, when I said goodnight to him at 11 o'clock, that I would never see him again, absolutely not. Not only is he happy, he's perfect, he's great, he's got the world in the palm of his hand. 5 days before he died, I took him to lacrosse practice over at old Milton High School, way at the other side of town. And on the way back, we stopped, and he and I went to drive through together, and we're sitting and talking, we're having a good conversation, and I got in the neighborhood, and I stopped the car. I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he goes, "What?" I said, "Oh, Will, let's trade. Can I be you? I want to be you. You can be me." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Will, look at you. Look at how big you are. Look at how strong you are. Look at this life you had. This is so great. Oh, I didn't get to do some of this stuff. You're going to travel. You're going to travel next month. You're going to Charlotte to play in this tournament. I never traveled till I was in college with a team. It's so much fun." He was looking at me like, "Dad, you have no idea." Of course, I didn't know that. The very next day, so we found him on a Friday morning. By lunchtime, people were coming into my house. I was getting emails, I was getting texts, I was getting business cards from wonderful organizations that were mental illness, suicide awareness, counseling, therapy, depression, all of these things. I didn't even know these places existed. All over this community. And friends of mine started telling me about mental illness in their lives, depression in their lives, and suicide in their lives. "Your brother committed suicide and I've known you for 10 years and you never told me?" "Oh, we don't talk about that." Wait, what? I don't understand. If you'd have died of cancer, would you be talking about it? Well, yeah. But no, my family doesn't talk about it. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I didn't know any of this. And you see up there this concept of everybody having a story. Well, every 13 minutes in America, someone takes their life. Every 2 hours, it's a teenager. So while we're in this room tonight, a teenager is going to take their lives. 10 of them already have today. 1 in 6 of the teenagers in your lives suffer from depression or some sort of diagnosable mental illness, and I bet you don't know that, because I certainly didn't. And 1 in 10 of the college students that you know actually have had a plan on how they're going to take their lives. I had absolutely no idea. I had no idea that kids like Will, that kids unlike Will, were struggling at such an alarming rate. I had no idea that family, that well-to-do northern Atlanta suburb family, is the face of suicide and the face of mental illness in this country. Absolutely stunned by it. And I just remember thinking, no one ever talks about this. And as I started to learn more about mental illness and depression and just what it was, and if someone would have said to me that Will did have depression, or if Will would have said to me, Dad, I think I have depression, me being the excellent sales guy that I am, would have talked him out of it. Because depression is a character flaw, and he's just not seeing the good, and I have the ability to show him the good, because everything that's ever bad that's ever happened to him happened to me, and I turned out great. Just like my father did with me, who was a wonderful dad. I had no idea that it was a physical deformity in the brain. It is a mental illness. It's not a mental crime. It's treatable. It is curable. It's very, very common, and it's okay, but nobody ever says it. Nobody ever talks about it. Oh, no, we don't talk about it. I went to a funeral of a young man who took his life, and instead of flowers, they wanted money to go to cancer awareness. Nobody talks about it. Depression is an illness. When Robin Williams died, people started talking about it. I was at Gwinnett Braves Field. It was Will to Live Life Teammates Night at the Gwinnett Braves game. And I started getting interviewed. How could Robin Williams? He had it all. How could he do such a cowardly thing? He had so much money. He was so loved. He was so popular. He had life in the palm of his hands. I said, yeah, I know, right? How could George Harrison, one of the Beatles, one of the most popular, successful, famous, rich persons who ever lived, how could he be such a coward and die of cancer? And the guy looked at me like I was absolutely nuts. I said, don't you understand? These people are dying of illnesses. Robin didn't choose depression. None of us had a clue. I certainly didn't. But it is an illness. And to be cured from an illness, A, you have to know about it. B, you have to talk about it. And C, you have to get treatment. It's as simple as that. Right? Now that my loved one is struggling is the name of this conference tonight, this meeting tonight. I'm before that. I want us to talk about it so I can figure out that he was struggling, because I thought Will was perfect. We all did. And he's really common. So it's even before that. If we don't talk about it, I have spoken to over, I don't know, what is it, Susie, 300 schools in 7 years. Not once have I spoken to a middle school. Oh, no. You'll put the idea in their heads, which is a complete fallacy. I get it. It's mental illness. You put mental in front of anything, it's a whole new ballgame. And like I said, 7.5 years ago, I do not come to this meeting, and I get very upset if someone said my son has a mental illness. But that was before I was aware. These people there's millions of them out there, and all we want to do is be normal. But you talk about mental illness, and it's abnormal. You have diabetes. Yep, you take insulin. Everybody comes to your rescue, if you will. Oh, we're here for you. I'm so proud of you that you're doing such a great job. Right? You have a mental illness. You have depression. You go up in your room, you shut the door, and you do not tell anybody, because the stigma that comes with it will embarrass you. Your friends are going to make fun of you. Your parents will be embarrassed. Their friends will talk behind their backs. Oh, it's a mental. Yeah. It's awful, and I don't have the answer. But I tell you what, now that I'm more aware, I approach things a bit differently. Just a bit differently. And that's maybe my goal tonight, is to get all of you to realize and get all of you to help me get this word out in this community, that if we don't talk about it, no one will ever get treatment. And every 2 hours, that rate's going to continue. It's now the second leading cause of death among teenagers. It's just more teenagers die of depression and suicide in 1 month than the number of people who died in 9/11. Nobody talks about this, though, do they? That's why I'm very honored to be here, and I'm very happy that we're talking about it tonight. Okay, so I'm a dad. I'm grieving. I have no idea what to do. I'm talking to Will and to Will's friends, and I'm listening to them, and I'm trying to figure out how this could happen to my son. And I started to think, how can a boy living in my home lose the will to live, this loving home, this happy home? And as I started to learn a little bit more about the day in the life, really understand the day in the life of a teenager today, I came across something that is so important. And this presentation that you're seeing is the exact same presentation I give to all of these high schools and colleges. And that slide is the one that is the most impactful. And I see these kids, I go, you guys have it hard. And not once, not one time in Will's 15 years did I ever say to my son, wow, this is hard. I was positive, I was there. Isn't this great, Will? This is so awesome. I'm so happy for you. This is going to be great. And I'm thinking I'm this wonderful dad because I'm positive and reinforcing this is going to be great, this is going to be great, this is going to be great. And I pushed him even farther away. And I think that's, he saw my strong personality. He didn't want to disappoint me. He didn't want to, he knew that if he said to me, but I'm not happy, that I would have put on my sales hat and talked him out of it, thinking it was a character flaw, thinking it was a choice he was making, and giving him all the examples of my bad days that turned out to be okay. And when I say to these kids, you have it harder than your moms did, than your dads did, than your teachers, than your ministers, than your counselors, than your scout leaders, your band leaders, your orchestra leaders, your coaches, all the trusted adults in your life did not have it as hard as you teenagers do today. They did not have it as hard when they were teenagers. And when I talk to parents, I often get that look, especially from the dads. Hold on. I've walked uphill in the snow, no shoes, both ways, every day. Or more serious, you're telling me my son has it harder than I did? A, you don't know me. B, I didn't get a car till I graduated from college. I didn't have any of this. I never played on a travel team. I never did any of this stuff that my kid's doing at age 14. You have the guts to tell me that? And I go, keep it coming. And when he's finished, I simply do this. Did you have that? No. I win. All that this encompasses makes it harder. And I challenge the parents to shadow their kids for 2 full days. Do everything they do. You have to feel what they feel. You have to see what they see. You have to read what they read. You have to become their lives for 48 hours. And then when you're done, you're going to go back in time and you're going to shadow yourself when you were 16 or 17 or 19. And then you're going to call me up and say, yeah, you were right. This 24/7 world that the Internet of Things and social media brings with it, and all of these wonderful opportunities that happen to these kids at such a younger age, also come with pressures and anxieties and stresses that we did not deal with at so young of an age. So while I was up there saying, Will, isn't this great? He was getting hammered by a 24/7 world, whether it was academic, athletic, social, and as later on, career. I went to Northwestern University, one of the finest academic institutions in the land. Susie went to University of Virginia, also one of the finest academic institutions in the land. Will was 15. We never talked about college. But he could not get into Georgia because he was not getting straight A's in AP classes, and he didn't take a bunch of AP classes. And that's what society told him. I didn't have to say anything about college. Pressure was already put on him. Go sit in Northview High School when the Georgia recruiters come in. That's what they tell them. Yeah, you need to take a lot of AP classes, and you have to get A's in them. I know a lot of kids that got into Georgia without that on their resume, by the way. So that's not right. That's not true. It's not real. I understand why they say it in this competitive world that we live in. But when I talk to those kids and I show all those college logos, I then say, I'm the president of a small company right here in Lawrenceville. I interview people for jobs every week, every month. Not one time have I ever said, so what did you get in AP Lit when you were a junior at Norcross? Oh, a B. Oh, that's too bad. That's going to hurt you. I never asked them their grade point average. I sometimes ask them what their major was, depending on the job they're interviewing for. But it's not the degree that I'm interviewing, it's them. And when I talk to these kids, I say, I beg of you to listen to this. I don't care about the piece of paper that you show me that you went to Georgia or Georgia Tech or Harvard or Kennesaw. How did you answer the questions that I asked that made you feel really uncomfortable? How did you shake my hands? How did you look me in the eye? How did you respond? What's your sense of urgency like? You going to come early? You going to stay late? What do your teammates say about you? What do your friends say about you? What do your teammates say about you? How do you work on a team? All of these things, that little paper from Georgia doesn't give me that. However, they don't get into Georgia, and they end up going to Alabama. It's 4 times as expensive. And we're all mortgaged up to the eyeballs. Again, I never had this conversation with Will, but he's thinking to himself, okay, I'm not getting AP classes, and I can't get the Hope Scholarship because I won't be able to get into Georgia. I'm certainly not getting into Georgia Tech, so that means I've got to go to Alabama. That's $40,000 a year. And again, guys, I don't have the solution for it or the answer. I just want you to be aware of it. It's not just what society is putting the pressure on, it's what he's putting on himself, and our kids are putting on themselves. The way I get into Northwestern University growing up today, I just don't. And I was a pretty good student. The world has gotten smaller, the international competition, it's just so much more difficult than it was in 1980. I stood on the mound at Fenway Park, pinnacle of baseball, looking very good in my uniform, I might add. High as you can get. Guys, I don't make the Norcross High School baseball team in 2017. Because when I was 12, I wouldn't have made the elite travel team. So I'd have to find a new sport. But back in 1974, when I was 12, there were no travel teams, and I could play rec ball all the way up till I was a junior in high school. And society allowed me to grow. Society allowed me to, my body to catch up. And I could play, I didn't even play as a junior, I played as a senior and got a scholarship. It would never happen today. It's a completely different world, and I never realized it. It never even occurred to me. Because we all want our kids to experience what we experienced. They can't and they won't, because those days are so gone. And then if I even begin to talk about social, if I even begin, like my spotlight on, if I even begin to talk about social, where do you even begin? Right? When Debbie Feeker dumped me when I was 15, she regrets that, by the way, Kathy. Nobody tweeted it. It wasn't on Facebook. I didn't have a relationship status go from in a relationship to single. When Will's girlfriend broke up with him 6 weeks before he died, it was on Facebook. Your relationship status changes. When I woke up as a 17-year-old, I didn't have a fear that if I fumbled during the football game, or if I tripped and fall, if there was a pimple on my nose, if I made some mistake today, I didn't have a fear that every single person I ever met in my life will know about it by dinner. Your kids, my kids, have that fear. Everything they do is out there for anyone to see. And it's a very different way to go through life. And then you think, why stress and anxiety is just going through the roof in this world? And the whole time I'm saying, isn't this great, Will? This is so awesome. I want to be you. And he's looking at me like, Dad, you are so clueless. He knew I loved him. He knew I was a pretty good dad. But he didn't think I understood him. And that bothers me. But he's made me better because I've learned this. When I talk to college kids, it's the same thing. 30% of unemployment is millennials. It's hard right now. And when I go talk to college students, they're looking at me like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? They're so used to instant gratification, which the internet gives them. Their whole lives, they've had the answers at their fingertips. I hire a kid at 21 years old or 22 years old, and 5 months go by, and they think they stink because they haven't gotten a raise. In 5 months? It was like 3 years before I got a raise or got promoted. It's a different world, and I had to realize this. As I'm hiring millennials, I need to know these guys they're used to succeeding and moving quickly. I need to make sure they understand that this probably isn't going to happen right now, and they're not failures if they don't. But they think they are. And so it's made me a little bit of a better employer knowing this. And I say to them, you need to understand you're working for a really old guy. And it was 3 years before I got a promotion. So we need to understand our audiences a little bit and communicate and talk about it. And this is one of these things that I love about my presentation, because I never ask anybody to spend more money. I never ask anybody to work harder. I just tell them to talk about it. I tell them to love each other. I tell them to be there for each other. On the bottom of the screen it says, do you know what the most stressful part of my day is, Mom? I had breakfast. I had coffee with a wonderful lady who I coached her son in baseball in Little League. And we're talking about her daughter, who's a senior in high school. And this lady works a lot, and she goes, I work a lot, John, so I don't get to spend that much time with this. When I come home, I want to hear about their day, and I just can't get them to say anything. Do you get this? So how was your day? How's practice? How'd you do on that test? It's just different pitches of one syllable is a typical answer, right? And they have no interest in talking about that day where they just got beat up from morning, noon, and night. And she said, her daughter said to her, Mom, you know what the most stressful part of my day is? Knowing that I'm going to come home and you're going to ask me these questions. That really floored me. That was like a month ago. I've been doing this for 7 years. That one hit me hard. They don't want to disappoint us. So how'd you do? Oh, did you talk? You haven't talked to me yet? Why haven't you need to do that because we have to get, right? And they're looking at like, it was really eye-opening to me, and I've been involved in this for quite some time now. How was your day? So now I say to my daughter, I said, I want to know what was the craziest thing that happened today? Tell me something that happened today that made you laugh so hard that you cried. Okay, she thinks about it, and she actually starts to answer it. All right, what happened today that really bummed you out? Right? But you ask them, how is your day? They know what you're getting at. How are your grades? And study, do this, and it's just all they want is a few moments. But all we want to do is help them. So again, I don't have the answer, but being a little bit more aware and showing that you're a little bit more aware is a great way to improve that relationship. Because I'm trying to get them to talk. And how do I get them to talk? And it all started with me. The whole concept of the Will Live Foundation started at his funeral. All of his teammates were in the church in their lacrosse jerseys, and I was talking to them about how much Will just loved being on the team. A win for him was being on the team. He didn't care about the score, and that's a nice trait to have. He rejoiced in his friends' successes, and he really loved you guys, so I want you guys to, in honor of Will, I want you to love each other. And while I'm talking to these kids, I'm starting to point out in the audience my friends. I'm starting to point out guys that travel from all over the country to be with me. There's Tick, there's Fife, there's Fran, there's Scooch, there's Lal. We had a lot of nicknames back then. Guys that I hadn't communicated with in 30 years, the other guard on my 7th grade basketball team. 30 years had gone by, I had not spoken to this guy, written to him, Christmas cards, nothing. Shows up from Chicago 3 days after Will dies to be there for me in Atlanta. And it started to hit me as I was giving this eulogy. I'm picking out my friends, and Susie's friends were coming from all over the country too. And I realized that every groomsman in my wedding was there, and every godfather to all of my kids were there. And the one thing they all had in common is I met them when I was Will's age, when I was a teenager. And I thought, had Will just realized, had his friends just realized they've already met life's best friends. They've met their groomsmen. These girls in high school have met their bridesmaids. Many have met their maid of honor. And that's a wonderful thing. And if we can get these kids to realize that, maybe talk a little bit more that these life friends, these life teammates that we call them, are going to be there for them, then maybe I can get them to talk a little bit more, because they're not going to talk to me. And when I talk to these kids, I say, who's it easier to talk to? Your mom, your dad, or your best friend? And I think I'm 942 for 942 with my best friend. Of course it is. Who understands me the most? My 13-year-old daughter or another 56-year-old guy? Another 56-year-old guy, right? It's your peers. It's the one that you learn about life with. You go through the trenches with. All of these things, these life teammates. They get me. They understand the obstacles and challenges and the negative issues that I face. And it's the same with these kids. So who are these life teammates, and do they know? And true hope can be found there. So I said, okay, now I know what I'm going to do. Instead of the Will Trautwein Memorial Fund, we're going to create a foundation that gets kids to recognize they've already met life's best friends, and let's do things together. Let's get them to understand that. And if I can get them to say, I love you, maybe I can get them to say, hey, I'm hurting. Because Will never told anyone anything. Not only was I clueless and Susie clueless about his situation, all of his friends were clueless. They had dinner with him the night before. They lifted weights with him the day before, all of these things. And then he was gone, and they had no idea. So this concept of who are those life teammates and do they know? And it was a very easy sell in the beginning, because all of these kids that I was talking to over in the, Johns Creek and that North Fulton area were just devastated. If I can get these kids to talk, right, I can get it out there that there maybe even is an issue. And now we get to the point where, now that I know my child is struggling, I never got to that point. So the foundation is a way to help get to that point. And so this concept of the Will Stock and Where There's a Will 5K, all of these events that we do are done by the high school kids themselves. It's their idea. They own it. They create it. We facilitate it. We enable it. And it's so much fun to watch them do that. And it's a great way, a positive way to raise this awareness and increase the education around mental illness and teen suicide, but also delivers hope to each other, because that's the easiest way to do it, is through a friend. So at that point, I thought, okay, great. I'm getting all these kids to finally talk to each other. What are they going to do when they hear, you're not going to have to worry about me anymore, buddy. Here, I want you to have all my best stuff. I'm not going to need them anymore. Life probably isn't going to, no one's really going to miss me when I'm gone. I'm going to kill myself. There's lots of different ways that these kids text and write and email and talk. I guess they don't email, they text. Snapchat, Twitter. So what do they do? What do you do if you hear a friend? By the way, this goes for all of us at our age here in this room too. If you hear a friend in need, you act, you acknowledge, you care, and you tell. It's like the stop, drop, and roll of mental illness, of suicide awareness. You act, you acknowledge they're serious. Will Trautwein did it. Every 2 hours, a teenager is doing it. I understand this is really serious. Because when I was 15, I would have said, toughen up. If a friend would have said, I'm going to kill myself, I said, yeah, right, toughen up. Not in today's world. And then you care. You be that friend. You be that life teammate. You show them the good. And then together you tell a trusted adult. And there's trusted adults everywhere, but we can't do anything if we don't know. And I think that's been the big part of this. And I have so many wonderful examples of kids acting, of families acting. I had a call from a college fraternity brother just yesterday. His daughter's a junior at University of Wisconsin in Madison, and her friends called him up. We're worried about your daughter. They acted. And now she's in treatment. I never got a shot. Will never gave us a shot because Will was too afraid to talk to anyone about it because of that stigma. He didn't realize that 1 in 6 of the hundreds of friends that he had were also struggling just like him, that he wasn't that abnormal. Oh, gosh. Why did it have to be him that we learned from, right? I often think that to myself. But here we are, and we have an opportunity to improve lives. We have an opportunity to get these kids to realize they have hope in each other. And just in that, a compliment from a teammate is so much more than a compliment from a coach. Just as a criticism is so much more devastating than a criticism from a coach. And this life teammate concept enables them to deliver hope to each other. When I do talk to the kids, this concept of positive passion in a negative world is a big one, right? The boy on the left-hand side is laying down a sacrifice bunt. Nobody ever got their picture on the front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, because they had a great bunt. But many games were lost because someone was unable to bunt. It's time to start rejoicing in singles, because in today's negative world, we spend a lot of time on how bad things are. And our kids spend a lot of time on how bad things are. To such an extent that that person, that report card with 3 A's, a B+, and a C is a disaster, is reason to take their life. Because it's going to keep them out of Georgia. The parents can't afford to go out of state. Everything's going to be a mess. It starts to spiral. And if they already are suffering from depression or mental illness, it just enhances it. And if they don't talk about it, it gets worse. That kid's a great student. That kid is a very, very good student. What's he got, 5 classes? 6 classes, and 5 of them he's doing great. What's happening in these classes that he's doing well that's not happening in the class that he's doing bad? Why does this customer love us and this customer hate us? What's happening here that's not happening here? Oh, well, over here you make mistakes. No. We're human. We make mistakes for this guy too. I want to know why this guy loves me. And I want to incorporate that into improving this side of things. I get that report card in 1975. My dad would say, "Don't come home with a C." Simple as that. Today's a different world. What's happening in these classes that you're doing well? You're obviously a good student. That's not happening here. It's a negative world. It's a 24/7 negative world, and it's causing this anxiety and stress to just continually mount. That face that coach is giving that football player is a face our kids are seeing all day long from all aspects of society. And rarely do I see that coach giving that face when something positive is happening. Do you think he's saying good job to that guy? I played sports all my life. I had over 200 coaches. 6 of them get Christmas cards from me. One of them's my dad. The differentiator for those 6 guys is that they showed me that face when I messed up, and they showed me that face when I did great. You finally boxed out, you got the rebound, you've been working on that, I'm proud of you, great to go, great job! They spitting on me, they probably swore through it as well. Right? But those were the coaches that you wanted to run through the wall for. Those were the coaches and the teachers that you would come back and visit on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Your freshman year in college, because you wanted to see them. You wanted them to know that you're doing well. And you wanted them to be proud of you. And when I talk to teachers, and I talk to them a lot, I say, be that teacher. Because these guys have a 24/7 negative world that you cannot understand. You think you understand, but you didn't have to do this. You didn't. You didn't have to do what they are doing today. And I'm very impressed with our kids. And I tell them that when I talk to them, and they look at me like, I love you. Because they're hearing so much negative. Because you better, why didn't you? You must. Because if they don't do it, they're not going to get into Georgia. So they got to do it. So they didn't get into Georgia. They're all good schools. They're all good schools. It's not the school, it's you. This concept of a positive passion is very, very important in this. And recognizing the good and showing that the grass can be green on both sides. Because these little things, this rejoicing in a single, can be the thing that can get you through the day. They do 95 things well every day, and they make 5 mistakes every day. But boy, do we spend a higher percentage on those mistakes, to such an extent that we miss some of the successes. We spend so much time trying to fix that customer's mistake that we forget to incorporate the great things we did for that customer? What is it that I do really well? What is it that I love to do, and how can I do that a little bit more often? And when I talk to these kids, I'll say, what do you love to do? What are you really good at? What's your major going to be? Those three questions should be asked at the same time, not just what's your major going to be. If I can get these kids, and we can get these kids to find that positive passion. And I say, if you don't know what it is that you're good at, ask a friend. They will tell you. And they'll be pretty accurate with it. So this concept of a positive passion, I think, is something that's really missing here. So we spend a lot of time trying to do that because we want these bonds to form. We want these bonds, this communication to improve. All right, I'm gonna wrap up with my trusted adult story. We are all trusted adults. We all have teenagers in our lives, whether they're students of ours, whether they're children of ours, or grandchildren, or nieces or nephews, whatever it might be, they're in our life. And a trusted adult knows that it's hard and shows that it's hard. Who watched the show Modern Family? You all watched it, right? So it's a very funny show, makes you laugh throughout it, right? And the main family, Claire's the mother. She has a couple daughters, and the one daughter's younger is an absolute genius, brilliant. She's getting straight A's in all AP classes. Claire goes to curriculum night and sits there at all 6 of her classes, and they tell them how much homework they have. And she walks out and does the math, and she says, oh my God, my daughter has 12 hours of homework every night, but only 6 hours every night to do it. Meanwhile, her daughter, they always make fun of because she's a straight A student and doesn't have dates and doesn't have anything, is just getting on with her life. And the mother says to the daughter, she goes, I had no idea. How do you do this? I had no idea this was so hard. How do you do this? And all the daughter did was say, thank you. And she hugged her mom. The mom finally figured it out. She knew that it was really hard, and she showed the daughter that she knew it was really hard, something I never did with Will. That's what a trusted adult does. You still have to discipline them. They still have to do it. But once in a while saying, wow, this is really hard. I didn't have to do this. Let's figure this out. As opposed to, I never got a B in my life. My kids would waltz through my curriculum. When Will's girlfriend broke up with him, I was there. I hugged him, wiped a tear off his eye. I told him he was going to be fine. I told him about Debbie Feeker and how she regrets it. I had other girlfriends that broke up with me, but look at your mom, she's hot. Right? And I got him to smile, and I thought I was there. And I said, you'll be okay, Will. Come on, dude. You just be fine. It's happened to me. You're going to be great. In 2 weeks, I bet you have a new girlfriend. You'll be fine. And I walked up thinking I did my job. I was a good dad. I was there. I was positive. Told him I loved him. Will said to himself, Dad has absolutely no clue. I wish Will would have said, I'm not fine, Dad. I want to die. But he would never say that because I would have talked him out of that too. 2 years later, after Will's death, his brother, Tommy, is a sophomore in college. Sophomore in high school. Same problem. Girlfriend breaking up. I said, okay, I'm going to try something new. Wow, Tommy, that sucks. What are you going to do? I don't know. I had no answer. That's awful. That's awful. Sorry, man. Maybe you should talk to a friend or something. He's like, yeah, maybe whatever. I said, I'm sorry, Tom. I hugged him. And I went upstairs, and with all my might, I wanted to go back downstairs. And my wife's like, don't. I said, no, I need to make him okay. He needs to be okay. Our kids need to be okay. We can't stand to see our kids not okay. So I'm going to go down there. I'm going to tell him about Debbie Feeker and how she broke up with me, but I found somebody else, and she broke up. And I married you, Susie, and you're hot. He's going to be fine, and I'm going to show him. I got all these examples to show him. And with every ounce of energy, it took me to not go back down there. And I didn't. And I went to bed that night like, wow, that was pretty unlike me. I wonder if Tommy's mad at me. 4 o'clock the next day, I'm at work. I get a text from Tommy, which I never get during the day. Dad, Chandler and I had a good talk today. Everything is fine. Thank you so much for the talk. I said, it sucks, and I don't know. Something I had never done in my life. But I showed him that I knew that it was hard, and I showed him that. And maybe I showed him that I don't have all the answers. And perhaps most importantly, I showed him that it is okay to not be okay. And as a parent, it's hard for us to do that, because we know they're going to be okay, and we don't like to see them sad. We love them so much. When I talk to these kids, I said, go easy on us, because we just love you. No one loves you more than we do. But we can't really understand you that well because we didn't grow up in 2017. So let's talk about it. And I think that's probably the most important part of our lesson tonight, right? Is talking about it. Dinner conversation. You want a good dinner conversation with your kids? Next Saturday, you're getting married. Who's in your wedding party? That's a great one. They'll look at you like you're nuts. But you know what? No, pick your 5. If you're getting married on Saturday, who's your 5 groomsmen or bridesmaids? It's a great way to think about it. Let me tell you about my groomsmen. Let me tell you about our bridesmaids and when we met them and how old we were, right? We're examples of this life teammate concept because we all had groomsmen and bridesmaids that were teenagers when we met them. Probably a pretty accurate statement. What is it that we do well? Learn from it. You do so many things well. Apply that, right? This concept of a mistake is a learning opportunity. Corrective action, root cause analysis, preventive maintenance, continuous measurement. Learn from your mistakes, kids. Learn. I want you to learn from what it is you do well. Of course you have to learn from your mistakes. Just like you have to eat and sleep. You want to differentiate, what is it that I do really well and how can I do a little bit more often? You want to implement some positive passion in your life and have some positive conversations? That's a great one. And when I talk to the high school kids, you can see it, especially when I start talking about what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, what do you love to do? It's an interesting dynamic that they don't typically hear. Finally, love heals. I get these kids to say I love you to each other. And I make them stand up and I'll say, I want you to turn to the person next to you and say, I love you, man. And they do it and they hug and the whole place kind of erupts in this positive energy. Some are really doing it aggressively. Some are kind of shy and rolling their eyes like, I love you, man. But over time, it's really interesting. Watch the Super Bowl. Count how many love you mans you hear in the locker room, on TV, at the Super Bowl. It'll be hundreds. Oh, this team just loves each other. We just have chemistry. We just love each other. Of all the teams I've ever been on, no, this is the team that we really love each other. Good teams win. Great teams love each other. Right? What kind of a teammate are we? And it's so much more fun when you're winning as a team. Right? That poor slob who wins the Wimbledon, who wins the final point, he has to run up into the crowd to find somebody to hug. Right? Compare that to a team sport. It's a silly, kind of funny, but there's some truth to that. You ask a golfer, what did Tiger Woods do when he won the Masters? He jumped up and he was by himself. He hugged his caddy. What did he do when he won the Ryder Cup? They had a party for 3 nights, 10 guys. Sharing it. Right? Share the good, share the pain. If we can get them to do that, then we can get them to start talking, and then we can start doing the treatment. So thank you very much, everybody. My speech is always longer than I want it to be, but I hope you understand what we're trying to do as a foundation in getting these kids to talk. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.